Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for The Nest. So what The Nest is essentially about is we center on this couple and, they have been staying in America in the 1980s for a while. They seem to have a really good life. However, one day, the husband is presented with this new opportunity. He has this business opportunity and it's going to be a big promotion for him. And in order to do that, he needs to move his entire family to his hometown back in England. And this is a transition that is not very much done with ease at all. In fact, as things start to go on, this really starts to eat away at the family and could really plunge them into full disaster and really just expose how dysfunctional they already were. So The Nest overall, I was very excited for this film. This is one of those films that really just kind of came out of nowhere for me, but I heard about it at Sundance and things like that, and since then I've been very excited to watch it, with the cast and also just the premise alone. It seemed like something that was really going to pique my interest. The trailers as well, I loved. They were very riveting, they were very haunting, and I was very excited to see how this film was going to turn out. I finally got a chance to watch it. I thought I was going to be able to watch it in September. Unfortunately, I had to wait till now, but Tuesday night hit. I watched it almost immediately on Wednesday nights, and I finally got to watch it, and I have to say, The Nest very much lived up to my expectations. This is a very riveting and very haunting film that is different than you were expecting, but overall, I think is a very effective drama for sure that I think is already very overlooked for many people. But we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And I will say right now, in terms of this film, I think that is easily one of the best elements of it. I think if the cast was not as good, I don't think this film would be as good as it really is. I think everyone acting-wise does an incredible job here. Jude Law, I think, does an excellent job in this movie. These are the kind of characters that he really thrives at. Characters like Rory O'Hara, someone that I think just does a really good job at being this guy that is so obsessed with the idea of becoming rich and having it all, and he's doing whatever he can to do that, and he's so possessed and consumed by that he's starting to deviate away from the things that really matter. And I think Law just does a really good job at doing that. This is a guy that, yeah, he's doing a lot of despicable things, but he remains likable because of Law's delivery and because of how good he is at presenting that character. You almost kind of understand why Rory would do something like this. And I thought overall he just did such a fantastic job in this movie. I was very impressed by him. But without a doubt, this film is nothing without the amazing performance from Carrie Coon, which I am so happy to finally say she's in a film that utilizes her full talents. And honestly, I mean, watching this film, you're just reminded of how good of an actress Coon really is. She's one of those actresses, and I'm sure I've said this before, but she's able to get you to understand every single emotion without saying a word of dialogue. There are scenes in this movie where her character, Allison, doesn't say anything, but you can just tell by the look on her face how she is feeling, and I think she portrays this character amazingly. Allison is someone that has very little agency and control of her life, and you really do see how this starts to bother her, and how throughout the film she always feels kind of uneasy. It always feels like there isn't something right, and you're just kind of waiting for her to explode, and I think Coon just gave such a masterful performance here. It is honestly an Oscar-worthy performance, I think. I don't think she's going to get a nomination, unfortunately, but I really wish she did, because I do think the work she does here is truly extraordinary. It's some of the best work of the entire year, and again, it really just shows what you can do when you have someone of Coon's caliber, and you use that to your fullest advantage. And I hope moving forward she's able to do more films like this, because she really just gives such an incredibly just tour de force performance, and I loved what she ended up doing here. And the chemistry between these two could not be any better. I mean, whether it's the more romantic moments where you really do feel that these two have this love for each other and they feel very close and they care so much about each other, I think that stuff is really well done. But also when these two are at odds, that's when you really just see how great the chemistry is. There is an argument scene between them that just felt so raw and really hits in the best way, and it really is due to Law and Coon's chemistry. These two are so believable in these roles, and I loved what they ended up doing as these characters. I think that is absolutely one of the best things about this film. I think if it wasn't for their pitch perfect chemistry, the film just would not work at all, and I thought they just did such an incredible job. The rest of the cast also gives some really strong performances. Charlie Shotwell and Oona Roche, I was very impressed by. You know, these are the kids of Rory and Allison, and they're kind of going through their own situations, and I thought they gave some very impressive performances. I was very happy with the way that they went about that for sure. I liked both of their performances here. Adeel Akhtar, I thought, did a really good job. Michael Culkin, just a really solid ensemble overall. I think this is a really great cast, and just a very good showcase for all of these actors to really show how talented they are in terms of this film. But now let's get to the directing and the writing, because that's the thing that I think is already not getting the credit it truly does deserve, because I think Sean Durkin's directing to this movie is really well done. From frame one, even though the film isn't a horror film, something about it just feels so eerie, and Durkin does a really great job with that. He has this very somber, very eerie tone throughout, and it's very unsettling in that way, and I thought that he was able to implement that so well into this movie. The mood that he sets really just looms over the entire film. The film will make you feel very uneasy. The film will make you feel very scared, almost like you're watching a horror movie. And I thought the way that he depicted that was really well done. I was very impressed by his directing here, but also just how much care he puts into this. You really do get to see just how much he cares about the story, and I really did like his directing here a lot. I think it was definitely one of the strong points of this movie, but I think the writing here as well is really well done. I think this is a very well done screenplay, especially when it comes to the premise of this film, because the premise of this film, you know, from when you read the description, you think this would go into like a haunted house type direction, and it really doesn't. The story of the film really is just the slow unraveling of this family, and that to me is more terrifying than anything in terms of some kind of haunted house, because this is something that really gradually starts to affect this family in a huge way, whether it's something as simple as Allison being thrown off by the way that Rory's family speaks, or her realizing that the money that Rory has been making, it's not really been working out as much as she thinks it has. Little things like this, I think he does a really good job of building up. You know, you get the sense from the beginning that even though Rory and Allison seem to have a really good marriage, there's something not right. Allison doesn't feel like she fits into this as well. She doesn't seem like she's on board with this ever at any point in the movie, and, you know, Rory doesn't really recognize that. He kind of overlooks the fact that, like, she isn't into this, and I think that's something that the film delves very well into here. And then contrasting that with Rory, who is someone that is very narcissistic, but he doesn't really realize that. He's very naive in that way. He feels like what he's doing is, you know, what's for the family's best interest. He's always talking about how he doesn't have enough, like the job that he has, even though it's really good. Oh, that's not good enough for me. You know, he's someone that is just so caught up in the idea of the human condition. He never has enough in that way. And again, this is a story we've seen done before, but I think it's presented very well in this movie, especially again when you consider it from Allison's perspective, who absolutely is the best character of this film. The way that she is just trying to grapple with everything, and again, has very little control of what's actually happening. She doesn't have a lot going on in her life, but there are things that are very important to her. There's something that was very sacred, and one of those things was where they lived, and you can see something as simple as just them moving to a different part of the world takes on a whole different atmosphere for her, and I really loved the way the film just eased us into that. I thought that was something that was very well represented here. And again, the way the film starts to dive into things like her not being as connected with her kids and her starting to lose that. Again, the way the film just, everything starts to crumble for Allison as a character, I think is very well represented in this film, and it was one of my favorite aspects of this film. You really just find yourself connected to her because, again, of how little control she has of this situation, and that in itself is scarier than anything else they could have done in terms of the horrific atmosphere, and that's why I think that atmosphere is so well handled in this movie, because this is kind of a nightmare scenario where you have a husband that is doing all this stuff and you have zero control over it, and there's nothing really that you can do. He's just plunging you deeper and deeper into misery, and I think that's something that was just very well written here in terms of the story. And you can see she's trying to stay sane throughout all of this. You know, she's in this situation that is just kind of brewing. And while she's trying to make the best of the situation, we know from early on she does not really want to be here. And Rory is very unaware of that. He's very narcissistic in that way, where he really is just kind of focused on himself. But you also get the sense that he doesn't really realize that. You know, he thinks what he's doing is helping the family. He thinks what he's doing is providing for all of them. But that's not really the case at all. And I think the film does a very good job of getting you to understand both of their perspectives. And I thought the writing there was very strong for both of those characters. I thought that the story where it ended up going with these characters is not really where you're expecting, and I thought they handled it very well. Even for the kids, things change drastically for them. You know, the younger son starts to get into he starts to get into some trouble at school, and the older daughter, she starts to suffer a bit as well, and I thought those stories were just really well handled. They did a very good job at telling the story of a family that always had these imperfections, you know, these things that were always bothersome. They really come to the forefront now that they're in this situation, and the way they just slowly start to lose everything, and the way that things just really start to just go downhill for them, I just think is so well handled with the screenplay. They really do take the time in setting this environment, so you really get a chance to connect with all these characters, so when things really do start to go downhill for them, you really care that much more, and I thought they did a really good job with that overall. And again, this is a family that did have a lot. You know, Allison was like a horseback rider and things like that, and he was kind of the trainer, and they had a really good relation. But you get the sense that for Rory, that's just not enough. And I think the film does a really good job of telling the story of, you know, expense is something that is enticing at first, but it really isn't everything. And what's more important, family or riches? Again, a story we've seen done before, but I think the way this film handles it is really going to affect a lot of people. And I think they do a really good job with telling that story overall. So I thought Durkin's writing here was just very well done. I was very impressed by the screenplay in this film. The cinematography as well here, I think, is just immaculately conceived. Every single shot is masterful. Every single shot is something that you really can't take your eyes off of, and it's a film that I really wish I would have had the opportunity to see in theaters. I know that we are in a really weird time right now where there's so few movies that are coming to theaters, but this really is a film that I wish I would have gone to see on the big screen just because of how amazingly conceived I think the cinematography is here. There are so many amazing shots in this film. It's by far some of the best cinematography that I've seen all year, and I just think the way that, Matthias Erdely, the way that he ended up constructing this whole thing, I think was so well done, and I was very impressed by his cinematography. And again, the atmosphere I think he represents very well. The points of this movie, again, they're really going to unsettle you, and I thought he did a good job with that. The score as well of this film, I think, is one of the best. It's almost entirely jazz music, but I think the way that Richard Reid Parry really has this very foreboding type music throughout was definitely the right kind of energy for this film. I was very happy with the way he decided to go about that. And the editing, this is where we do get into one of my issues. I think the second half of this film does drag a little bit. I think the middle portion of the film, there were some scenes that I just was not as invested in, and I think they could have taken a little bit more time to, I think the film drags a little bit too much in the second half, but the first half and the third act especially, I think, are really well done. I think the film is very well paced overall, and I was very happy with the way the film was editing-wise. In terms of flaws with this movie, I do think there are some subplots here. They're just a little too underwritten, especially one concerning Oona Roche's character. They don't really do all that much with it. You know, it's something that we do come back to, and it does have an impact on the story, but not as grand of an impact as you really wanted it to, and I think they could have done a better job with that. And so I thought that kind of brought things down a bit. I also wish we would have gotten to know some of these supporting characters a little bit more, like, say, Rory's mom. She really doesn't have all that much to do, and I would have liked to see more of that dynamic for sure. I know the focus is very much on just the couple of Rory and Allison, but I would have liked to see a few more of the other characters and kind of like what they're going through. In terms of the ending of this film is very controversial. I didn't have a problem with the ending. I thought the way the movie ended made sense, you know, with the way things were playing out. I thought it worked well with the message. I thought that it went well with the atmosphere of the film. I don't really have a problem with the ending itself. That being said, I do wish there were at least 20 or 30 more minutes added onto this movie. I think the film did need it. I think there were a few more things we could have dived into, and I think it would have made the film just that much more effective. I think this still is a very gripping and very effective film, but I think that that would have made it even that much more effective. There's one scene, especially with Allison, that I just fully don't understand, and I would have liked to understand a bit more of the significance of it, and I think that if they would have dived deeper into it, I think it would have hit even more. It hit very well because, well, it's Carrie Coon, and she's able to elicit emotions out of me very easily. Again, she's just one of those actresses that, like, I am glued to the screen whenever she's there, and I think they do a really good job with that overall. You know, I think she always does a really excellent job with that. But again, I wish they would have just dived a bit deeper into some of the aspects of this film. Other than that, though, The Nest is pretty much everything I want it to be. It's a very haunting and very gripping film that, again, tells a story that we have seen done before, but with pitch-perfect performances from Jude Law and Carrie Coon, really excellent direction from Sean Durkin, a very haunting atmosphere throughout, and just a really well-written screenplay. I think this is a film that is very much going to live up to your expectations. I think, finally, it's a film that I think is just not getting enough praise, and it finally is a film that does utilize Carrie Coon's talents to their fullest advantage, and gratefully it's in a film that is just as good as her, and I think it's a film that is definitely going to stick with a lot of people for sure. I definitely very much enjoyed this film quite a bit. I think this is an incredibly effective film, and I'm definitely going to give The Nest overall an A-. But all guys, in my review of The Nest, the most you guys saw this movie, all the thoughts on it. We'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.